a very good evening to you. And here we are once again on a Friday evening. H with you through to the top of the hour with some of the best sounds of swing and nostalgia. What have we got? How about some service bands on the air? That's one I hadn't seen for a while. Here's one hadn't been out of its wrapper, Jack Teagarden. It's time for tea. Kay Kaiser, a bit more Perry of course. But we're going to start with a bit of Basie. And there they go, fading away into the distance. That's as good a way as any to get going, isn't it? Count Basie, the Count, from another one of these great Avid 4 albums on 2 CD collections, which are such great value for money if you're knocking around the bargain bins, or buying them new, frankly. I'm going to set you back too much. Count Basie and the Kansas City 7. Namely Count Basie himself on piano, of course, the Count, Thad Jones trumpet, Frank Vess. Interestingly, on the notes, I think they've whoever did the liner notes for this many years back in the early 1960s rather forgot that there were saxophones on it. It's got Frank Vess and Eric Dixon listed just purely as playing flute. Now, I don't confess to be an expert on reeds or wind instruments, and I play the saxophone, well, I can play a basic scale in one key, that's it. I've got one, but there's work yet to be done on that. However, I can tell the difference between a flute and a saxophone, and I'm sure they do play flute on some tracks, but they play sax on that track and a few others, and they're not listed. So Frank Vess and Eric Dixon on flutes, and in that case, tenor sax, I would say. Freddie Green guitar, Ed Jones bass, Sonny Payne at the drums, and recorded just a few months before I was born, in March of 1962. And as it remarks in the liner notes, this record presents Count in a fresh and unusual small band context, where he permits himself more freedom than he ordinarily does with his big band. However, it's not without precedent, we're told. In October 1936, on his way east from Kansas City to his ultimate triumphs in New York, he entered a Chicago studio with a quintet and recorded, among others, 2 of the titles found on this album, Shoeshine Boy and Oh Lady Be Good. His Kansas City 7 was originated 3 years later, so just before 1940, when he recorded with another small section of his band. The band had become world famous in the meantime, and the musicians he chose then were Buck Clayton, Dickie Wells, Lester Young, my word, Freddie Page, Walter Page and Joe Jones. And they rode once more in 1944 with Rodney Richardson in place of Walter Page, the bassist, I think it is, isn't it? But it was not until March 1962 when this album was recorded that the Basie called out the Kansas City 7 again. And pretty darn good they sounded, I thought. I'm loving that sort of a wonderful walking bass line going on there, really keeping it going nicely from Ed Jones on the bass there, and equally cracking drums from Sonny Payne, that lovely bass drum drop, dum dum, and a little reference, I think it was Lady Be Good he references, was it something like that, in his solo? Fantastic. And if you ever saw him playing, again, I've mentioned this before, but I always remember particularly seeing him in a programme that Oscar Peterson used to have sometimes on BBC 2, I think it was, and he'd have guests. And there was a duet, 2 great big Bösendorfer grand pianos, back to back, as it were, the 2 interlinking to each other like 2 big jigsaw pieces, I think they were. So they were facing each other. Count with his flat cap on, and Oscar with his suit as always, seemingly about half as big again as Count Basie was. And Oscar had that sort of flute style with his piano, with his fingers and his hands on the piano. And the Count, when you looked at him playing, his hands were almost perpendicular with the keyboard. They just sort of hovered above the keyboard and were just sort of absolutely flat. There was no sort of rake in the wrists at all, and the fingers just sort of popped out. How he did it, I don't know. A unique style. But as you can tell, it was sort of Spartan in many ways, but really worked. Terrific stuff. Lovely to be with you. Now, lest I forget, as I'm wont to do, as you know, age being what it is, there are slight changes afoot. Now, before you panic not. We're not disappearing. What we are doing is we're going to be alternating going forward. So from July, there's a new schedule here at Manx Radio, your nation station, the old Satanic Mill on the Hill, and there is going to be a few changes afoot, all of which means, from our perspective, the rest of it you can find online if you go to manxradio.com, all the exciting things that are happening and everything that's changing around. From our perspective, it does mean that on a Friday night we're going to be alternating. In essence, our sister show, Jumping In, is being ousted from a Saturday night for the new schedule, which I'm sure might be good for some, maybe not for us, but there we are. But it does mean that the two jazz shows are going to alternate. So we're still here, which is great news. So one week it'll be Sweet and Swing, and the next week it'll be Jumping In, the modern show. So Sweet and Swing, Jumping In, alternating back and forth that way. We'll see what happens to the podcast. I might be able to do some more podcasts as well as we go along, slip in some extras. Who knows? Fingers crossed, that's what I'm sort of vaguely thinking of. So don't go anywhere, but do be aware that it will be Sweet and Swing one week, and then it'll be Jumping In the next week on a Friday at 9. That's the way it's going to be going forward. The podcasts are all there, of course, for you to go and enjoy when and where you want, anytime. And like I said, I might try and slip up some extra podcasts of Sweet and Swing if I can. So there we go. Just so bear that in mind in case you tune in one week and think, this sounds a bit more modern than usual. You might like it, who knows? But if you don't, well, fear not, Sweet and Swing will be back in that same place the next week. Right, onwards. Where are we going to go from there? I think we need a little bit of vocal of some kind, I think. What about Les Allen? Here's some wise advice. 1, 2, button your shoe.
1, 2, button your shoe. Put on your coat and hat. I play a game like that while I'm waiting for you. 3, 4, open the door. Hurry, for heaven's sake. I count each step you take while I'm waiting for you. 5, 6, my heart does tricks. I picture all your charms. 7, 8, you're at the gate. You walk into my arms. 9, 10, kiss me again. Tell me you get a thrill, just as I hope you will, while I'm waiting for you. I found a use for Mother Goose that well deserves my praise. It's been such a consolation when you start your tardy ways. When we've a date, I'm never late, you're never quite on time. So I made a variation on an old familiar rhyme. Coat and hat. I play a game like that while I'm waiting for you. 3 and 4, open the door. Hurry, for heaven's sake. I count each step you take while I'm waiting for you. 5, 6, my heart does tricks as I picture all your charms. 7, 8, you're at the gate and you walk into my arms. 9, then 10, kiss me again. Tell me you get a thrill, just as I hope you will, while I'm waiting for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, my heart does tricks. 7, 8, 9, 10, hurry, for heaven's sake, I'm waiting for you.
Hurry, for heaven's sake. Yeah, he's waiting for you, you know. You don't want to be keeping waiting there, do you? No. He might disappear off. And who was waiting? Well, it was, in fact, Les Allen with his orchestra. 1, 2, button your shoe from 19 37. Very popular in his time was old Les, and a good-looking chap as well. He went freelance originally after joining Henry Hall in the early 1930s. That was a little bit later, when I think he was freelance by then. Good-looking chap. He was a bit of a sort of, a pin-up of his day. He was the, I don't know... Who's a pin-up these days? I was going to say Morton Harkett from Our Harbour. I'm about 30 years out of date there, I think. I remember him being a bit of a pin-up. I don't know. Are there pin-ups now? Are there digital pin-ups? I suppose people just, I imagine young girls just put them on their phone now rather than buying a big poster and sticking it on their bedroom wall. I could be wrong. I don't know. However, he was extremely popular, good-looking chap, and... during this time, so around the 30s again, his good looks and the band's charisma, I think certainly in the latter years that he was with Henry Hall, meant he got more than 50,000 items of fan mail in less than 2 years. That's not bad going, is it? And then he went on to perform with lots of different bands, running his own group, released hundreds of records, both solo and as a band member. Born in London but brought up in Canada, and then returned to England in the 1920s. And then he had a very successful career over here in England, 20-odd years, from the late 20s all through the 30s into the 40s, and then went back to Canada again, settled back in Toronto. But, he'd still got itchy feet, so a few years after that, he came over in 1954 for a reunion with Henry Hall again and the BBC Dance Orchestra. Doesn't sound too bad a life, does it? I must admit. 50,000 in 2 years, how many is that a day? I don't know, I'll leave that one. I'll leave that little one with you. The last, I think, for now, of our... I've enjoyed this very much, I must admit. The Jazz and Vocal Collection. I found this lurking in the depths of the Sweet and Swing archives. Three-dimensional sound. And it was one of these 1980s where they'd taken old recordings, classic and rare recordings from the 20s through to the 40s, and to digitise them, as it were, and clean them all up to make them sound like they were in stereo and get rid of the hiss and the pop and the crackle and such like. Stereo from mono conversions that are really convincing, and I hope you agree with me that most of them have been very successful. I've listened to them on the headphones here, and I thought they'd sounded pretty darn good. So let's see how this last one sounds. It is Johnny Mercer with some bad news. If you're particularly living in a tower block, the bathtub ran over again.
I heard dripping, there was something dripping, it was water dripping on the bathroom floor. I was dreaming about our 8 o'clock date. I heard dropping, it was plaster dropping, and I had to pick the pieces up once more. Now you know the reason why I'm late. Oh, the bathtub ran over again while I was lying there and dreaming of you. Yes, the tub ran over as tubs will do, and the ceiling got soaking again. The folks below began saying, dreaming about your baby's okay, but the house is floating away. Yes, I guess I heard the water, but I didn't bother to look. I thought we were in the country, and the water was the tinkle of a babbling brook. So the bathtub ran over again. It does whenever I'm dreaming, and I'm always dreaming of you. So before I drown the whole darn town, I think you better say I do. Lying and dreaming of you. Yes, the tub ran over as tub tubs will do, and the ceiling got soaking again. The folks below began saying, dreaming about your baby's okay, but the house is floating away. Yes, I guess I heard the water, but I didn't bother to look. I thought we were in the country, and the water was the tinkle of a babbling brook. So the bathtub ran over again. It does whenever I'm dreaming, and I'm always dreaming of you. So before I drown the whole darn town, I think you better say I do. So I think you better hurry up and say I do.
Couldn't resist that little twofer. We had the bathtub running over, followed straight into Ramsey Lewis with, you might have recognised, Wade in the Water. Yeah, okay, I know. It's just my sense of humour. I couldn't resist it. And yeah, what did you make of the Johnny Mercer then? Quite nice. I was listening on the phones on that one. Now, you could sort of hear a little bit of how it had been treated there. There was a little bit of, I think it's called quantization or something like that. it just sounded a little bit sort of dry and clipped on his voices in places. However, overall, I'm sure if you're just listening on your smart speaker or phone or in the car, it probably would have sounded pretty darn good. And generally, I think it was pretty darn good. I must admit, I enjoyed that. Yeah, the bathtub running over, it was Johnny Mercer, of course. My bathtub is running over. I suppose you'd call it a novelty number. And quite good fun, though. The bathtub ran over again. Johnny Mercer with Victor Young directing Sterling Bose on trumpet. Jack Teagarden, funnily enough, he's coming up shortly on trombone. Fulton McGrath on piano. Dick McDermott guitar. Hank Wayland bass in 1934. And as some wonderful liner notes to each of the songs in this little collection. The presence of some outstanding jazz talent does no harm whatsoever. Well, it wouldn't, would it? Teagarden gets things going with an unaccompanied intro. McDonough's driving guitar is propulsive throughout. Fair dinkum. The song is a typical Mercer collaboration about a guy who dreams of his girl while bathing and forgets to turn the tap off, as you do. The result is the bathtub floods over. It's all very literal, this one, isn't it? The guy is late for his date, and the house is near to floating away. No, it's all been taken very literally. The answer to the problem, they just have to get married, don't they? Yeah, they do. One can only hope they get along together as well as Johnny Mercer and the guys assembled here. Top liner note writing, that one. Oh dear, I could take up that as a profession, couldn't I? Wonderful stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And that's the last, I think, from there for now. I think there are a few more, but we'll come back to them maybe at another time. I've rather enjoyed that, though, I must admit. Also been enjoying our dig into Perry Como's collection, recently released on Avid, from our friends at Avid Jazz. 4 classic albums, plus 4 albums and a bit more, all on 2 CDs. And this one is a sentimental date with Wednesday Night with Music Hall. Make someone happy, relaxing with Perry Como. We're going for Wednesday Night Music Hall tonight. And if wishes were kisses.
If wishes were kisses, I'd still be kissing you. I'd hold you in my arms again, the way I used to do. If wishes were kisses, how happy I would be. I'd always have you close to me to thrill me through and through. If dreamers were schemers, I'd make my dream come true. If wishes were kisses, I'd still be kissing you.
How happy I would be.
I'd always have you close to me to thrill me through and through. If dreamers were schemers, I'd make my dream come true. If wishes were kisses, I'd still be kissing
That's it, I'm ready for Christmas. That was full-on Christmas mode, I think, from Perry there. It is for me. Not difficult to believe, frankly, with the weather we've been having. It's pretty much exactly the same as December, albeit mid-June. So, yeah, I can get my tree up now, put the lights out, and get the turkey going. I am ready for Christmas. I know it's nothing to do with Christmas, that one, Perry, but it just shouts Christmas to me. I don't know. As so many Perry Como tracks do. Not last week, but a lot of them do. Wednesday Night Music Hall was the album, recorded in New York in 1945. And also, well, actually 45 and 47. Quite a few dates, actually, looking at it. It's one of those ones recorded from the 40s through to the 50s, in fact, the various tracks. I don't know exactly when that one was recorded. It doesn't say as much, but it starts off saying recorded in RCA Victor Studio 2, New York City, the 18th of December 1945. And then it goes to some dates in 1947, some in 1949, some in 1950, some in 53, and some in 1955. Is it complex? I don't know. It's takes an awful long time to record an album at that speed, doesn't it? Either way, sounds good, doesn't it? Perry Como. We'll dip more into Perry Como next week. Plenty to go out there. And frankly, by the time we finish the double album, it actually will be Christmas, so I can play some Christmas ones, in theory. Now then, I mentioned Jack Teagarden earlier on, playing on that wonderful mono to stereo conversion, and when I was rummaging through for music for this week, I found one still in its cellophane. Yeah, I know, amazing. I don't know how long it had been lurking there. One the old maestro must have got years back, and sadly he never got round to listening to it, so I thought I'd better do it for him. Jack Teagarden, Volume 2 on Naxos Jazz Legends. It's Time for Tea, original 1929-1953 recordings featuring Benny Goodman, Red Nichols, Frankie Trumbauer and others. What's not to like?
St. James Infirmary. I found my baby there. Oh, stretched out on a long white table. So sweet, so cold, so fair. Oh, let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, oh, she can look this whole wide world all over. She'll never find another sweet man like me. Oh, when I die, I want you to dress me in straight glass shoes and a pearl gray hat. Put a $20 gold piece on my watch chain, so the boys will know I died standing pat.
Oh, great stuff. Great stuff. We'll keep that one in the bag. I'm enjoying that very muchly indeed. Jack Teagarden, It's Time for Tea was the album. Fresh out of its wrapper. Been sitting there probably for, well, Lordy knows, 10 years maybe? I don't know. I mean, I've been doing it for the last few years, and the old Maestro has not been around for a couple of years, so it's a minimum of 6 or 7 years. Glad I got it out. Really enjoyed that. St James Infirmary, of course, you'd recognise that one. Jack Teagarden's Big 8, recorded in December of 1940. And his Big 8, well, some big names in there as well. Rex Stewart on cornet, Jack himself on trombone, of course, Barney Biggard on clarinet, Ben Webster, you heard that lovely breathy tenor sax solo, Billy Carl at the piano, the wonderfully named Brick Flegel. That's a great jazz name. Brick Flegel, guitar. Billy Taylor Sr. at the bass, the great Dave Tuff at the drums. He was a character as well, from all accounts. And speaking of characters, a wonderful story in the liner notes about Ben Pollock, telling a story of the June 1928 when he hired Jack Teagarden. And he was interviewed, and this was related in a 1937 Downbeat magazine article. And Ben Pollock telling this great story, saying, "Hey, somebody mentioned a kid from Texas by the name of Jack Teagarden, who was staying over on the west side. I grabbed a cab, and a few minutes later I walked into a dingy room where a trumpet player by the name of Johnny Basendorfer was reading a paper under a gas jet. I couldn't believe it, but I said, 'Hello, Johnny, I'm looking for some kid from Texas by the name of Jack Teagarden that's supposed to play a lot of trombone.' Johnny gestured to a small cot on the other side of the room and said, 'That's him.' 'Can he read?' I said. 'He's the best,' Johnny replied. 'Well, I got a job for him,' I said. Basendorfer walked over to the cot and shook the prostrate form of the kid from Texas and said, 'Jack, you got a job in Atlantic City tonight. Get up.' But he only mumbled, 'Man, I just got here. I don't want to go nowhere.' All shaking from then on was useless, and Johnny said to me, 'Don't pay any attention to what he said, Benny. He's knocked out.' Disgusted, I started to go, and Basendorfer said, 'Well, there goes your job with Benny Pollock.' At the mention of my name, the kid jumped up from the cot and said, 'Man, are you Benny Pollock? When do I leave?' I told him the train time was 6 p.m. and he'd have to shuffle. Presumably he did shuffle. That's a great story. Love it. You don't get that in classical music in the same way, do you? No. Louis Bellson, been enjoying diving into that one over the last couple of weeks. I'll keep that for another week or two, I think, yet. Drummer's Holiday. It didn't sound like he was having a holiday, it has to be said. Seemed to be still working fairly hard. Louis Bellson and his orchestra. Blues for Keeps, that one was called. A great lineup again. Charlie Shavers on trumpet, Eddie Burt on trombone, Ernie Wilkins alto, Teddy Lee on baritone, Nat Pierce on the piano with a nice solo there, sounding a bit like Basie again, wasn't he? Ray Brown, the great Ray Brown on bass, Louis at the drums from 1956. Keep that one knocking round, I've enjoyed that. There's been some really good stuff of late. Now then, a bit of a confession, because, again, when I was selecting the music, I spotted this one, Service Bands on the Air, Volume 2, Victory Party. Wartime radio broadcasts featuring Robert Farnon, Bing Crosby, 11-year-old Victor Feldman. I thought, this is good stuff. Pearl Carr, and it sounds like good stuff. Sadly, when I opened it up, what is actually inside is Carol Gibbons and the Savoy Hotel Orpheans, Volume 7. Now, wonderful though Carol Gibbons is, it's not what I was thinking of. So I might have to do a bit of reshuffling there. Whether I'll find it, who knows? I know there were a bit of mix-up going on in the latter years of the old maestro's tenure. And I think something's become filed in the wrong place here, or in the wrong box. So we'll have to shelve that one for now and go on to Kay Kyser, his greatest hits and sentimental favourites. And here's, well, I know time's pushing on a bit depending on your bedtime. 2 Sleepy People.
Here we are, 2 sleepy people.
Wake up, Jenny Sims. Wake up, Harry Babbitt. Come on here, children. Let's have a little harmony.
Here we are, out of cigarettes.
Holding hands and yawning, look how late it gets. 2 sleepy people by dawn's early light, and too much in love to say goodnight. Yes, here we are,
In a cozy chair,
picking on a wishbone.
from the frigid air.
2 sleepy people with nothing to say, and too much in love to break away. Do you remember the nights we had to linger in the hall?
Now my father didn't like you at all.
You're telling me. Do you remember the reason why we married in the fall? To rent this little nest and get a bit of rest. Well, here we are,
Just about the same, foggy little fella.
and a drowsy little dame. 2 sleepy people by dawn's early light, and too much in love to say goodnight. 2 sleepy people by dawn's early light, and too much in love to say goodnight. Ho hum,
Ho hum,
too much in love to say goodnight. Ho hum.
Oh, Kay Kyser. There, and it doesn't actually list who's actually singing with him, which is a bit annoying on that one. You might be able to let me know. Howard Caine at manxradio.com. Caine with an E, C-A-I-N-E, if you do. Or if you'd like to hear more Kay Kyser or anything else, I'm always delighted to hear from you. Drop me a line, Howard Caine at manxradio.com, or of course Howard at Sweet and Swing Manx Radio Broadcasting House, Douglas Head, Douglas in the Isle of Man, and that is IM15BW if you like putting pen to paper, Basildon Bond, or just something ripped out of your notepad. Who cares? And of course you might remember Kay Kyser's College of Musical Knowledge, which made him quite a figure in the States from the mid-30s onwards when he was doing these broadcasts from the Black Hawk restaurant in Chicago, where there's also some wonderful jazz from the likes of Shelly Manne in later years. What should we end up with? Well, how about some Red Roses for a Blue Lady?
I want some red roses for a blue lady. Mr. Florist, take my order, please. We had a silly quarrel the other day. Hope these pretty flowers chase her blues away. Wrap up some red roses for a blue lady. Send them to the sweetest gal in town. And if they do the trick, I'll hurry back to pick your best white orchid for her wedding gown.
Good track, isn't it? Red Roses for a Blue Lady. Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians, can't even say it. Don Rodney taking the vocals, and Guy Lombardo, another incredible character. Born in Ontario in 1902 and started out on the violin, taught by his father. Came from a very musical family, of course. Brothers Carmen Lombardo, Victor and Lebert, I think it is, isn't it, without the T. And then they headed south in the 1920s and began recording about a year later in Cleveland and had a load of residencies, including downtown in Chicago, pitted against the nearby Black Hawk restaurant, of course, where Kay Kaiser would be resident, I think, round about the same sort of time. That's about it for another week. Do not forget then, going forward from here, we will be alternating on a Friday night with our sister programme, Jumping In with Brother Chris, modern and contemporary jazz. Check it out. If you don't like it, fair dinkum, you can always go and listen to one of the podcasts, all available online or via our usual provider. Either way, we'll be alternating back and forth, going forward in the brave new world of Max Radio. Look after yourselves, take care, see you then, cheerio.